Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're gonna kick off a minute after the hour. Just let everybody join and get settled in. Let's see, we're ramping up nicely. All right, we are at the one past the hour. Thanks everybody for joining. Today we're going to be discussing old challenges or new again, better healthcare recruiting in 2023. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. It's no secret that through one of the most unique eras in the recruiting and staffing industry, we are experiencing a war on talent. But the news is that the talent's won. And so the war is over. And so today we've invited a mutual customer between LaborEdge and Sense to talk more about that. Now, before we get started, of course, thanks again for taking the time. We understand that you're busy. We want to drive value into your day. We want to educate you about what's going on in the marketplace, what we're seeing, and ultimately ways that you can attack those challenges. We love questions. We want you to ask questions anytime during the session. We want to keep it conversational. Ultimately, any question you have, just drop it in the Slack chat. In the Zoom chat, and we'll be monitoring those. If we can take a pause, we'll do it right there on the spot. If not, we'll make sure to answer everything and anything. And then last but not least, everyone asked this. Absolutely, this is being recorded so that we can distribute it out after the call. And ultimately, anybody who wasn't able to join or had to drop early or came in late, you'll be able to review the entire webinar. So with that, kind of cover an agenda for you today. We'll first kick off with some speaker introductions, and then we'll move into the overview of the partnership between LaborEdge and Sense. We want to talk about kind of the overall state of healthcare recruiting in the landscape. And then last but not least, and certainly not least, is the highlights with Brant. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm James Phillips. I lead partnerships here at Sense. I've been here since January of 2021, so 2-year veteran now. And prior to that, I came up through staffing and actually led some talent teams before joining the SaaS space with Career Builder, and then ultimately here with Sense. Allie, do you want to say hi?
Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be here with you guys today. I am the Release Communication and Quality Assurance Manager here at LaborEdge. I was prior Director of Client Services within support, but before coming to LaborEdge, I was actually a Nexus user as a travel nurse recruiter. So I got to get in the dirty with everyone that you're going through right now, but super excited to be here. I'm actually going to pass it off to Brant now if you want to say hi.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Brant. I'm the Director of Marketing and Technology here at ARM Staffing, and we have been using Nexus and Sense for almost 3 years now. So enjoying the ride.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Brant. Jumping in just a little bit about Sense for anybody who's not aware. We were founded a little over 7 years ago with a mission to build the first end-to-end talent engagement platform. Since then, we've grown to serve over 900 customers across all industries. And more than own results, we've seen our customers hit amazing milestones of hiring great talent in minutes by creating memorable and personalized experiences. We're really proud of the partnership that we've grown with LaborEdge. Alan, do you want to talk a little bit about LaborEdge?
Of course. So why Nexus? Nexus, powered by LaborEdge, expands and amplifies abilities of travel, local, permanent, and per diem agencies. We kind of touch on everything, and I'll explain a little bit more on my next slide. So Nexus was developed specifically to transform healthcare staffing operations by a couple different things: increasing your ability to attract and quickly place the best available healthcare staff, eliminating friction from your staffing processes to increase speed and improve efficiency. Lastly, we are improving patient care through increased caregiver satisfaction.
Very cool, and thank you for that introduction. And the most important thing that we hope that you take away from today is that ultimately LaborEdge and Sense have been working on this partnership for a couple of years now, and we try and build based off of the requests and the requirements of the most important folks here, which is of course you, our customers. And so as you can see here, just a native text message capability that lives inside of the platform. And ultimately, we've done quite a bit with the automation layer as well. Of course, we'll be able to talk about that more in future webinars. But we've now amassed 38 mutual customers, which is absolutely exciting, fantastic. And we've seen a lot of data come in that is showing significant growth, allowing agencies to be able to really get into the market, talk to the candidates, pull them through all the way to that most important perspective, which is the hiring seat. And ultimately from there, even be able to get folks back out and re-engage, which ultimately drives a lot of bottom line back to the organization. Today, just want to talk a little bit about the integration. So today we've got Engage, which is the automated communication workflows. We do have messaging, both bidirectional and one-to-one. I'm sorry, one-to-one and omni-channel. And then Sense AI chatbot. So the data enrichment chatbot and screening chatbots are live. Ultimately, there is some work still to be done to get the rest of it fully enhanced. And so that's working through the upcoming roadmap through the end of the year, which will be the AI chatbot for sourcing and career websites, Sense Discover, which is the AI job matching. And ultimately, we were recently just released our Sense referrals tool, which is a very exciting addition. This is a brand new native built tool that we are leveraging within the Sense platform that should be coming live, like I said, within the coming months. So enough about Sense and LaborEdge. Let's talk about the star of the show here. Brant, do you want to take a little further on the introduction?
Sure. Well, I joined ARM staffing kind of mid-2019, I believe, and jumped in through the marketing department, but had come through a bit of a programming and development background. And so not too long after I joined the team, we kind of merged marketing and technology. And I think Sense is a great example of how both of those really walk hand in hand. The two departments are so similar these days. But we've been using the platform, again, for about 3 years. We've been using the Engage platform, the messaging platform from day one. Our poor account manager, Will, has given us the chatbot demo at least 3 times because every time it enhances, we ask for a new demo to see if it works for us. And I swear, Will, the 4th time is a charm. Like the chatbot is coming to ARM staffing. Like we know it's getting better. And we are definitely excited to see the referrals module come to Sense. So excited to see how the platform continues to evolve and grow.
Awesome.
Great. I do have a question for you. To provide a little bit of context for our audience today, can you please provide us with some history and background about some of the challenges that your company has faced prior to using Sense?
Sure. Yeah, well, the challenges that we faced are not uncommon to what I would assume most of the watchers today are experiencing. And that's just very segmented platforms. So we came from contingent talent management, we came from TextUs, we came from MailChimp. And when we joined with LaborEdge, we onboarded LaborEdge and Sense together. So we have never known the two platforms apart from each other. But I think it was clear from day one that they work so well together. And they were able to meet our business challenges kind of hand in hand. Some of those business challenges, I think we're all familiar with, right? Too many forms of communication. If you've got your recruitment efforts, your marketing efforts, your sales efforts, all on different platforms, it becomes really too much. And what communication happens on one platform might not be logged in the other, and all of a sudden you're losing visibility, and it can be really difficult. Some of the challenges we faced also include candidate check-ins, right? How do we keep on top of our candidates that are starting their assignments when they're coming off? Sense automation really made that a thing of the past. It's incredibly easy, and I think we'll talk about that a little further into the presentation. Limited visibility into how the recruiters are spending their time. This goes back to logging. Honestly, the single sale point between LaborEdge and Sense that helped us know that this partnership was the right one was that everything that occurs in Sense gets journaled back in LaborEdge. It seems like such a small thing, but if you've ever had a recruiter or a compliance manager out of office and you want to go see what the last conversation they had with their nurse was, it's difficult unless it's being journaled, which for Sense and LaborEdge it is. And so that was definitely a challenge that we were able to overcome. And then again, recruiters spending time on manual tasks. So automation, it's a really big word for really simple things, right? We just want our recruiters to check in consistently, to say hello on a routine basis, to be able to manage tasks that can be done through routine schedules. And so getting that set up through Sense really kind of accommodated some of these challenges.
That's great. I'd actually love to hear why automation is important to you and your business. How have you used automation to overcome challenges in today's talent landscape, such as skill shortages, staffing candidate expectations, as well as keeping up with the digital transformation?
Sure. Well, right off the bat, we know automation is going to save recruiter time. That's the biggest thing we can do. The quicker we can get a recruiter in touch with a candidate, whether it's on the phone or via text message, the more successful that recruiter is going to be, and the better we're able to use that automation. Secondly, we want to help the relationship between the recruiter and the nurse. So relationships are easily built through consistent communication. We'll talk about this later on, but one of the easiest things we did to start with to help that relationship grow was to send automated happy birthday messages. Immediately, a recruiter and a nurse are now bonding over a simple text message, and it definitely improves culture. Automation helps us, create multiple campaigns simultaneously. I think anybody who's coming from a MailChimp or a Constant Contact background feels the frustration of having simultaneous email lists being run all at one time. Sense definitely covers that. And that also goes into dynamic segmentation, right? If I want to split out my ICU nurses and my ER nurses into different groups, it can be incredibly complicated, not to mention time consuming. But automation has resolved a lot of that. And when I say automation, I'm specifically referring to the Sense and LaborEdge partnership.
So Brent, you mentioned here, and I think these two key points in between, so help building better recruiter relationships, but also the ability to create various campaigns simultaneously. So anybody who sat in the seat knows that, especially when you first walk in the door to any organization, you either are in sales, you're in recruiting, or you're doing both, and you have a blank book, or maybe you have a list. And when that list is brand new, it's massive, and you're just reaching out to anybody and everybody you can to try and develop these relationships. And all too often we see organizations fall into where you just kind of do a post and pray or a spray and pray with the hope that ultimately you get, somebody on the hook, but it does not feel personalized. So you touched on these two areas, but is there a way that you actually meld those two where you can, that you're using this to personalize the broadcast, the massive broadcast?
Yeah. So what we've used Sense primarily for is not just the text broadcast. I think there's a lot of platforms that can do that. What Sense does really well are the scheduled follow-up messages, right? So we even have messages that get sent backwards to our recruiter that says, don't forget about your candidate, call them. Pick up the phone if they haven't responded to a text message and make the phone call. To your point, it's not just about the spraying and praying. We're using automation to not only send out the first and second touch point, but the third and fourth back to the recruiter. The fifth and sixth maybe be an email. I mean, the multi-medium automation, I think, is where you start to build that relationship with the nurse, but also make sure that you're covering all your bases, right? Some people don't like responding to text messages, as weird as it sounds for most. Some people prefer emails. And so being able to schedule that and automate it, especially if it's a one-click automation for the recruiter, which it can be through Sense, I think makes that relationship between a brand new prospect and a brand new sales member happen. I think it benefits the fresh sales members as well, because you're taking an experienced candidate journey and you're giving that into the hands of somebody who may have never had to do those touch points before, right? So somebody who may be brand new into sales has a pre-configured sales journey for them that's been crafted by some of your senior team. And so they're able to step in and immediately start producing on a more mature level. And I think you said it in your question, one of the biggest thing that this is doing is covering blind spots. We're taking things that maybe people are unaware of, and we're covering that through automation so that way we don't have to worry about it later on.
That's powerful stuff.
Agreed.
Oh, you're welcome.
So I think something that's really helpful for those who are evaluating automation solutions, like we were talking about, is actually seeing automation in practice. Can you walk us through the automation use cases that ARM staffing is leveraging in Sense?
Yeah. Yep. So sort of like we just talked about, sales prospecting, I think, is the first and foremost reason anybody would want to use Sense. At the end of the day, we're all battling the same challenge, and that is, how do I take people that I do not know or have not contacted and get them interested into travel nursing? And so we've used Sense through email and text message marketing to reach as much of our database as we can, and get those contacts back into the hands of the recruiters. Our on assignment journeys, that's been another great way of using the integration, just consistently reaching out to our nurses who are already on assignment. We know through Sense and LaborEdge when their placement's going to end, so we can send them a text message 6 weeks prior to their end date and say, hey, 6 weeks is coming up. Are you ready to extend? Are you looking for a new opportunity? How are we going to do that? And again, it's all automated, so our recruiters aren't having to go through their calendars and figure out who deserves a text blast today. It's just happening. And next thing the recruiter knows is they're going to get a text message back saying, I am looking to extend. Oh, okay, great. Let's talk about your contract, right? Status updates. This is a big one because the relationship between LaborEdge and Sense is dynamic. There's about a 15-minute delay between something happening in LaborEdge and it's syncing in Sense. So if we have candidates that are being transitioned through statuses, maybe they're going from booked to active, we can immediately send them a congratulations text message. Hey, congratulations, you're active. If you need anything, here's the best people to reach out to. And redeployment's kind of back to talking our on assignment journeys. That automated touch point of saying, hey, are you happy where you're at? You're about to end in a month. Do you want to redeploy? Are you looking for somewhere else? Starting that conversation early enough prevents that fall off, right? Because we don't want our nurses to get 2 weeks away from the end of their assignment, be like, I haven't heard from my recruiter, so I guess I'm just going to open up the next app and see if I can find a better job. All of this goes back to an enhanced relationship that keep that nurse engaged and on assignment.
For sure. No, thank you so much for going over that. I think all of those are great examples for what you guys are using Sense for. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, we just got a question. So one of the challenges that we've run into, I think, just collectively as we're trying to build these journeys out is actually relevance and communication. And Brandon, you've touched on that a little bit. You're ensuring you're sending the right message to the right person. So that's that personalization piece. So like, what are some ways that you've been able to keep your data clean, enrich your data, and how has that really impacted your business?
Yeah, data cleanliness is definitely a high level conversation, and the best way that we've used Sense in that area is creating specific automations around the parts of our database that we are unfamiliar with. So for instance, if we know we have a group of nurses, but we're not entirely sure what their specialties are, or we haven't talked to them in a while, right? We can send them out a quick email and just say, hey, are you still working as a nurse? If so, are you interested in opportunities? Click here and we can send them to a landing page where they're able to say, I am a nurse and I'm also an OR nurse, or I'm also a PCU nurse, right? So we use sort of our web platforms to clean the data, but we use Sense to initiate that engagement, to initiate that action, to send them back to sort of a data clean filter. I think Sense's goal with the chat bot would be to do that instead. So that way you could send, right, you could send out a message and say, hey, are you still looking as a nurse? And the candidate could say, no, I'm retired. That chat bot would immediately say, thanks for responding. We appreciate your time, right? And send that response back into LaborEdge so we can get the correct status. I think there's a lot coming down the road for data cleanliness in terms of LaborEdge and Sense. But right now, engaging the audience in the blind spots, sending them to a landing page where we can clean the data and get them back into LaborEdge is how we're doing it.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Sorry, I'll go ahead.
No worries. I was just going to ask, what do you think, Brand, are some of the outcomes has ARM staffing realized with Sense?
Sure. Well, I think we've got some really exciting stats here on the slide. I said this earlier, we've managed to hit 92% of our database through automated engagement out of Sense. I feel like that's a really great number. I would love to see 100, but I guess there's a bunch of retirees and do not hires that we're probably not going to email. But that being said, I know from talking with our account manager that the average agency right now is somewhere between 10 and 20% database reach, right? So if you're working out of Bullhorn, if you're working out of Healthcare Source, or I think it's called Simpler now, it can be really difficult to make sure you're getting to every record in your database. Sense and LaborEdge are no respecters of candidate record, right? You can go in, set up an email for everybody in there, and off you go. Last year, we sent nearly 6.5 million touch points out of Sense. That's exciting. If you've ever used Cheetah Mail, MailChimp, you know how expensive hitting 6.5 million emails is going to get. That for us was almost 500% increase from 2021. That's because we have a terrific teammate named Kyle Hanley, who came in and sort of managed our email marketing and did a terrific job. 59% increase in unique candidates reached. This is important because not only are we trying to reach into our database, but we're actually trying to create unique relationships. I don't want to just ping the same nurses I have over and over again. I want to dig into my database, activate the clients that are passive talent, and try to start that engagement first off. And so we've seen just terrific success that way. And ultimately, that just means we're filling positions faster, and we're just reaching more people.
Fantastic.
So, I mean, phenomenal. And we've already kind of touched on this next thing, balancing the personalization and leveraging the automation and efficiency. But, I think really again, being able to put a massive message out to a large group of people, that in itself is inherently quite easy. Automating it, again, that's what the platform's for. But driving away those inefficiencies is like the key moment here. So can you talk a little bit about things that you've seen maybe erase from your experience as you put more automation into play? So I guess put a more specific way of that is things that used to happen that no longer happen that are driving efficiency.
Sure. Yeah. We do not expect automation to replace people. We want automation to hurry up and connect our candidates to our recruiters, right? We're using automation to speed up the connection to people and not trying to replace them. And so some of those inefficiencies we've experienced especially when you're dealing with marketing channels that are in unique silos, comes down to the number of steps a candidate would have to go through before they finally get to a conversation with a recruiter. I go to a website and I click on an apply link. Now my email has to be submitted and get assigned, and it's going to take forever. If I can automate that process to where the moment I apply for something, a text message comes back to me from a recruiter and says, hey, I just saw that you applied for this job on Leap. I would love to contact you. What's the best time to talk? Right? We're using automation to speed up the process from A to Z and get that recruiter on the phone the quickest. And so in regards to inefficiencies, I think LaborEdge and Sense integration sort of removes the different silos, creates this one central hub for communication. And then the automation aspect of that is making sure that when something happens in LaborEdge, a communication is sent out of Sense. And as soon as it can happen, that recruiter is on the phone with the candidate saying, hey, I know you're interested. Let's talk about where we can place you.
So the perfect tee up for this, actually. And we talked about the inefficiency on the recruiter side, but I don't think anybody is the concept of ghosting is foreign to anyone. What are some of the best practices that companies could use to prevent, the drop off and the ghosting?
Yeah, I think the best thing you can do right now is have a human goal with your automation. And by that, I mean, your automation needs to sound like there's a human being on the other side of that message. And that for us has prevented a lot of the ghosting. There are so many platforms right now, so many push notifications, so many automated text messages telling you to vote somewhere. People know when a text message is automated. And our director of recruitment would love me for saying that he wrote a text message that said, are we breaking up? You haven't talked to me in a while. He wrote that and I was like, absolutely, we're not putting that in a journey. It's not going to work. And it has been one of the most successful hook text messages that we have had, because it sounds human. It sounds like somebody said, hey, what's the deal? Are we not together anymore? I haven't heard back from you. It's silly, but it's human. And that human aspect sounds like our brand. It sounds like our recruiters. And again, trying to humanize the automation as much as you can, I think prevents that ghosting. And it entices people to think maybe there's a human being on the other side of this. And then that again goes to your sales team. Like they need to respond quickly and also be a human. but humanizing and trying to sound as real as you can, I think has prevented a lot of the ghosting for us.
That's awesome. And I mean, it's a challenge that everybody faces, does not matter the segment of the vertical, but something as highly as competitive that you're in, your segment. I mean, all the more reason why. And, the kind of the last button on the inefficiency side of the efficiency side, you touched on it earlier and you touched on it again, but I think the reminders back to the recruiting team, because even sitting in the seat, if you ask a recruiter how they're doing and their answer is not busy, that's traditionally the answer, right? Then you wonder what's up. And so for somebody who's traditionally busy all the time, they need a little reminder, a little tap on the shoulder. Hey, don't forget to reach back out to customer or client or candidate, or update your boss with reporting. And so, it sounds like you've put some of those efficiency measures into place to just give those gentle nudges. And we actually call Sense sometimes a nudge engine. But do you want to touch on that just a little bit more about some of the reminders that you're giving to recruiters these days?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the coming off reminders, I think, are probably some of the most important, right? Reminding our team that they have actives in the field who are having conversations about what their next step is. We've been talking a lot internally about you're blind if you think that every other agency isn't hitting your nurse, right? And while a desk may have a really healthy set of nurses who are active, that nurse is getting job offers from every other app on their phone. And so the sooner we can engage that conversation of saying, you're coming off, we know your assignment's ending, let's you and me talk about the opportunities that are ahead of you before we start contemplating what else is happening. the more likely that nurse is able to go back to the recruiter and say, hey, I actually have seen something come up. It's 100 miles the other direction, but the pay looks really great. Can you contact the facility and tell me what's going on? The quicker we're able to have that conversation, the more likely that recruiter is able to go and engage the facility and win that job for the nurse. Now, all of a sudden, your retention rate is much higher just because you've had a coming off text message that hits the recruiter first. So that's been a really big one.
That's awesome. Thank you for the feedback. So, I think I've never met a staffing owner today that doesn't say, awesome, love new technology, would love to embrace it. What's it going to cost me? Because ultimately, and that's any business owner really, that's ultimately going to drive an ROI statement. And so, you've always been, to my knowledge, ARM has always been at the forefront of leveraging new use cases, new tech in an industry that's candidly a little bit slow to typically adopt stuff. So, what is some of the business strategy that you put behind investing in new technology?
Yeah, well, I said this earlier. One of the biggest selling points for us when it came to LaborEdge and Sense was the visibility between the two platforms. What happens in Sense is logged back in LaborEdge. And while that seems subtle, especially if you're investing tens of thousands of dollars, I think you would have to ask yourself how many conversations have slipped through the cracks between your sales team, your compliance team, and your recruitment team that may have prevented a nurse from day of start, readiness. If that has ever occurred because there was not perfect visibility into the many conversations that's going on with that candidate, then if that's ever occurred, now you've got your money to say, well, this is how much it costs me. I'm willing to invest that to make sure it never happens again. That was sort of our motto going into this new technology of saying, how do we create as much visibility, as much accountability for each department into the platform and into the relationship between the nurse and the recruiter? And on top of that visibility, how can we sort of teach our team and train our team to use that to build internal culture? Right? Because now if my recruiter can say, hey, that timekeeping specialist has reached out about that missing time card, or that onboarding specialist has reached out about that expired license, now that recruiter doesn't need to go have a conversation that they otherwise might have had and get up from their desk and spend time doing it. That recruiter might not be as upset with a conversation that they don't know is happening, because now they do know what's happening. They can just pop up the journal. They can see all the communication that's happening logged straight into LaborEdge, and all of their questions are answered without even getting up from their desk. And so not only are we building external relationships with our nurses, but we're creating an internal culture with our team. And it's all part of this accountability that occurs through Sense and LaborEdge journaling right back into the tech. And so when I say that was honestly the most important part for us, I mean it. Like it really goes to build a healthy organization. And so all other features aside, that one was really the biggest sort of feeling behind the move.
That's good to know too. And ultimately, I'll use my Southern roots here, but it also gives you one less throat to choke, right? When you've got basically two vendors seamlessly partnered together, ultimately, if there's any challenge that you run into, it's either come to LaborEdge, come to Sense, come to us collectively, and we can work on it collectively. You don't have nearly as many vendors to go out and figure out where the challenges are coming from.
I mean, it's either one less neck to choke, or you find out which neck you need to choke, right?
Faster.
I mean, yeah, we've definitely used the platform to identify where inefficiencies are happening, right? Which person has a bad attitude, which person is treating our nurses incorrectly. And I think it goes into the reverse. Not only are you getting accountability for how healthy your staff is, but you're also able to quickly identify where the unhealth is and go in and address it however you may need to.
That's huge. That's huge for a business. With any decision that you make when adopting new technology, whether it's for purchase or something that you have or something that you've had for a long time and it's been in mothballs. There's the idea of internal buy-in, right? And we like to think that, oh, it's automated, you don't really have to do anything, but there are still tangible things that need to happen in order for a software to be properly adopted, and no one's immune to that. What are some of the ways that y'all have really implemented both LaborEdge and Sense, but the tools themselves, and ensure that you're getting the most out of the software that you have?
Yeah, Sense has been a platform that has grown with us over the last few years. I think after our first year of having Sense, our goal was like, let's have 10 journeys. And now I think we're coming up closer to 50. And so that internal buy-in started with one successful journey, a happy birthday text message. If it's the nurse's birthday, send him a message that says happy birthday. I remember the first time that got sent out and a recruiter came to me and said, did you just wish my nurse a happy birthday? And I said, no, Sense did. It's automated. They're like, my nurse just said thank you. Nobody has told her yet. And said it made her morning. And so already, like right off the bat, one simple text message that we were able to automate. Now, every time a nurse has a birthday, the recruiter sends, it comes from their recruiter and says happy birthday. It was the first automation that we had set up. It was probably a demo from onboarding, but it immediately showed our recruitment team that there were blind spots, that there were communication methods that could go on, that the recruiter was either too busy or unaware of to initiate. First day check-ins are a great place to start if you're looking at buy-in. Sending a simple message saying, hey, today's your first day. Hope you have a great day. Here's our on-call phone number. Here's our HR phone number. If anything happens during training, here's my personal cell. Reach out. Hope you have a great day. That's a super simple text message to set up. And now if you're a new client in LaborEdge, you've got 2 journeys and you're started, right? And you're already covering things. Lastly, I would say the easiest thing you could do to get buy-in is a weekly email. I want to send a Friday email to all of my actives, just saying, hey, here's what's going on at our company. Here's what's going on in the industry. Email us or email your recruiter if you have any concerns about what's going on in your assignment. It's really easy to start small. And I think that's the biggest thing you have to look at when buying in is, that there are blind spots. What's the smallest way to start and then grow into the platform? We're 3 years into this and we're still finding ways that we can increase our communication with Sense out of LaborEdge. And that also goes back to the partnership between LaborEdge and Sense, right? LaborEdge is constantly adding fields from the platform back into Sense that allow us to act on things that are occurring within the ATS. And so as that relationship grows, our relationship with the platform and with our nurses grow as well.
I love to hear that. And it is a testament to the ever evolving use cases, and as things are requested, we're constantly looking at how can we add, how can we improve, and most importantly, that comes from folks such as yourself. We can put stuff in that's cool, but ultimately, if it's not useful for y'all, then what are we doing here? So you already kind of touched on this. By the way, you can make all checks payable to Brant for giving you the first 3 journeys. But is there any other advice you would provide when it comes to just getting started with with a new software, especially in this case, that you think might help people?
Yeah, I have said it, and I think it's just really important and enough to reiterate. You just have to keep it human. If you're at the beginning of your automation, automation is such a big word, but I think the way you start the project is you look at your ecosystem, you look at what communications you are sending out, which communications you want to send out, and say, how can I schedule this, but also make it sound like it's coming from a human being? When we realized that Sense would allow us to automate text messages on behalf of the recruiters, right? So the message goes to the nurse, but it looks like it came from their recruiter. That was a game changer for us, because now all of a sudden we had to figure out, how do we make these automated messages sound like their recruiter actually sent it, because it's coming from a phone number that the nurse is familiar with. And so that was a challenging piece, but it's honestly the best way to get started. Say, how do I make this sound like a human? I will say, on behalf of recruiters, that can be challenging because there's a lot of personalities and a lot of people have preferred ways of saying the same thing. So they get used to it after a while. But anyway, if you can make it human, you're starting off on the right foot.
As far as the folks that are involved in getting, a platform set up, obviously the recruitment team, the front line, you need the leadership's buy-in involvement. When you think about a cross-functional or cross-departmental effort like this, like, who all do you typically tap to, kind of get things kicked off when you're implementing new software?
Yeah, this was really a 2-department kickoff for us. And then we've merged departments in as we've been successful with the platform. For us, I was the director of marketing, so I sort of made the decision for our team. The buy-in was from the director of recruitment, right? Because most of this effort is to help his team and to help his team engage. And especially if you're coming away from a platform that you feel successful with, whether it be Text Us, right, or MailChimp, the pullback is going to say, we're already on a mildly successful platform. Why do I need to step away from this? And the reality is, when I took this to recruitment, it came down to blind spots. We all knew that they existed. If we could bring visibility into the parts of our recruitment effort, into the parts of our conversations and our multi-departmental interactions with the nurses, we could bring visibility into that and eliminate blind spots, we were golden. And so director of recruitment was definitely on board. Our VP was definitely on board, because it brought her transparency into how her staff was handling the nurses. And then everyone else was kind of along for the ride, right? Our sales team, compliance team, payroll team, they were along for the ride. But as the integration between LaborEdge and Sense has grown, it's brought them into the platform. Like, I remember when compliance manager as a field came over into Sense, and now all of a sudden we could send messages out on behalf of the compliance manager. I mean, all of a sudden your whole Sense environment split into 2. Now you've got recruitment efforts, now you've got compliance efforts. We're still waiting for the payroll team to join, and we know that that's going to be soon, but it'll be exciting stuff.
That's awesome. That's, I think, a testament to ultimately what you're pointing out is that this is cross-departmental, and especially as your organization grows, more people need to be involved. They need to be informed. But it's hard to get everybody on the same page without having those automated notifications where we can simply just add you in, tag you, and then all of a sudden, hey, you're sending communications, you're receiving them. So I mean, that's, as the get started model, it always, like you said, it kind of starts out small, but incrementally increases where everybody starts to get involved. So it's good to hear that that's happening for you, and I'm sure you would like for it to happen more quickly, but ultimately it is happening, which is great. We did get a question. Go ahead, Brian.
No, I will say, I do think that the platform grows with the company, but I would say that for anybody looking to onboard, that there are gains to be made right off the bat. Like, I don't think you have to look at this platform and say, well, they're saying you have to grow with the platform, so are we going to be a year into this before we find efficiencies? I truly think that you will find day one efficiencies the moment you start plugging in even your first 3 or 4 automations. The continued growth are just, that's just the cherry on top. Like, that's additional efficiencies that you get to find. And part of that, again, grows as LaborEdge enhances the integration. But I don't think that you need to be afraid of what an onboarding timeline looks like, because you're going to find what you're looking for right off the bat.
That's huge. Because again, especially thinking about when you're spending money, you want to be able to see a return on investment as soon as possible. And so the faster that you can actually see those things happen, the more comfort you feel in just getting up and running. So that's really great to hear. We did get a question around talent communities, and it was a little bit earlier on the conversation. So you've got these buckets today. You kind of mentioned them a little bit earlier, but like folks that are currently not looking, passive talent, obviously that's a really critical source that often gets overlooked while you're sourcing. So it involves a lot of posting, advertising, job advertising, but being able to actually leverage the folks that you already have inside your database. What is there anything that you're doing for like building a nurturing campaign for those communities that are off assignment basically?
Sure. I can get really passionate about this only because, again, coming from a marketing primary background, I have wasted hours, days, weeks of my life trying to create mail lists, exporting things out of my ATS into CSVs, uploading tags back into MailChimp or Cheetah Mail or whatever, Constant Contact, hoping that you've got your segment right, realizing that you wanted to add an additional group of statuses, like, oh, I forgot dormants, or oh, I forgot ICUs. Then you're back through the whole process. What we're doing to create nurturing campaigns out of LaborEdge and Sense is using Sense's dynamic segmentation, creating audiences in Sense that are micro based on status and specialty, and that get specific messages that are poignant to them, right? An ICU nurse does not care about high bill rates in the med-surg community. They want to know what's happening in the ICU world. Or people in Florida want to know what's going on in Florida because they don't want to travel to Pennsylvania in the weather. They're perfectly happy in the sun. Creating that segmentation and that unique audience is incredibly easy. It is, I will say that in the industry, I think it is the easiest thing to do in Sense out of LaborEdge. And that alone, I think, helps you hit the message that you want to the exact audience that you want, which just, again, nurtures them with information that's poignant to what they're looking for. And if you can have their responses go back to something, like we said earlier, that's data cleaning, that gets them engaged, that immediately connects them with the recruiter the moment they show interest, the more likely you are to hit that passive talent community and start converting on that.
I think that's the key. And I feel like you've virtually touched on this last piece, but I do like to kind of highlight it out. We always, as you're implementing new software or implementing a new practice of any sort, you always have these benefits and these outcomes that your goals. But ultimately, there's always some surprise, I didn't even know I was going to do that. Can you touch on any of the things that were kind of a surprise that you didn't even maybe think about in the beginning that have worked out for you?
Sure. I will keep the conversation going from a marketing perspective, if there are marketers on the call. The unexpected benefit is that Sense has one of the best template builders in the industry. If you have ever taken a table row and wanted to add bottom padding to it and know how frustrating that is in an email dev world, the email builder out of Sense is just, it's fantastic. I know I've talked to our account manager, Marisa, about it all the time. But from a sales and from a recruitment perspective, we have said it a couple times already. The most unexpected benefit that we got was the immediate blind spots that were covered, right? Some of the simple messages that in your mind, your sales team should already be doing, but they're not. They're missing it. They're not sending the 4-week out text reminder. They're not sending the day of start reminder. They're missing things. And when you automate that and you recognize how many of those conversations are occurring that weren't, or how many responses are coming in that weren't coming in because now that automated message is hitting every single time, you're going to realize that there were areas that you thought were being covered by your sales team that were getting missed. And so the more you automate the simple day-to-day things, the more blind spots are going to come into light. and you're just going to start experiencing unexpected benefits.
That's the headline right there. I love it. Yeah, that's just amazing. So we're going to open it up to Q&A. There's probably a few questions outstanding here, but just to kind of give a visualization of what the LaborEdge and Sense partnership really looks like and what it's supposed to benefit for you, right? Is there's several modules here. So there's Engage, there's messaging, there's chatbot, like I mentioned, soon to come referrals, Discover, in meetings. And really the whole purpose of this is to design to be a complementary platform of engagement that works perfectly and seamlessly with LaborEdge. And one of the value props or benefits is that with a lot of the systems out there, you have to buy all or nothing. But in this case, you can build as your business grows. You can prioritize the tool that is most important to you at the moment. And we're more than happy to help consult and advise on those things. But as you can see, we touch every, kind of every point of the talent life cycle, from hello all the way to the point of placement. And ultimately, we want to be able to, if you've already got something in place that's already working for you, you don't have to replace it, but at least we give you that option should you determine that it's not the best use for you. So with that, I do want to ask, is there any other questions out there that we want to get Brent to answer for us? Seeing no others, we are incredibly efficient. We are actually 9 minutes ahead of schedule. It'll be 8 by the time we get done here, but did want to provide, there is one that came in. So what role does technology play to support positive culture and diversity?
Well, I touched on this when we were talking about, I think we were talking about some of our use cases, but in terms of creating a positive culture, the transparency between departments and the having everything logged from Sense back into LaborEdge, I think benefited our culture because, again, people weren't wondering if things were happening outside of the system. Our recruitment team wasn't wondering if emails were being sent. They weren't wondering if payroll was having conversations with their nurses. Everything was immediately visible and identifiable. And that does one of two things. One, it answers questions for the recruiter, so they don't have to go figure out what's happening with their nurse. And then two, it provides accountability to people who are sending messages outward, right? I know I have to send a good email because my entire recruitment team is going to see that email and decide whether or not that was worth their nurse's time. My compliance team has to have a good attitude when somebody misses their background check, because that communication is going to be seen from the entire recruitment team. And so that visibility into your total organization communication creates an accountability with each other, and that enhances culture because people have to be kind. Otherwise, it's out there for everybody to see. People have to be respectful. Otherwise, everyone's going to realize you're the jerk in that department. And so little by little, I think it just overall brings everybody up, because you can't hide behind a platform that somebody else might not be aware of.
No, I think that's great. And it's the insight, driving the betterment of not only the organization, but the candidate experience, because ultimately the most important thing here, and sometimes it's easy to overlook, is that the people come first. And so if you can identify, move past the inefficiencies, move past the forgetful, and get right to the thing that matters most, which is the people, then ultimately it drives NPS, it drives a popularity, it drives growth within the organization. So I appreciate you sharing that. And again, I'm sure there'll be questions that come up after the webinar. I always think about things 2 hours after I watch something. So we have provided contact information for Brent. And also, like I said, for anybody who wanted to, how do we get kicked off on journeys? There's the email for them. But ultimately, too, obviously, you've got your resources here with Ali and myself. And, I just want to kind of wrap up and say thank you so much for taking the time, Brandon. It was awesome to hear your thoughts. Appreciate you being open about a lot of what y'all are doing. I, never wanted you to share any secret sauce, but I think you were incredibly forthright and informative. So I really appreciate it.
Sure, my pleasure.
It was great.
All right, team. Well, with that, we will put 5 minutes back in your day. Please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or shoot an email directly, and we look forward to connecting and partnering with you further.